This is Jonathan Yates. Welcome to the Politics of Sports. Today we're going to discuss the importance of local politicians and community programs in developing Anne Arundel County as a sports powerhouse for the United States. With me today is State Senator Edward Riley from the 33rd District of Anne Arundel County and David Smalley, the Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation in Anne Arundel County. Thank you for being here.
It's our honor to be here, Jonathan. Thank you.
So, Senator Riley, last session in the Maryland General Assembly, you introduced legislation proclaiming that Anne Arundel County has the best high school sports in America. What was the genesis of that?
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, since I was the father of 4 children who all wanted to play sports in all the seasons, I saw how important these local recreational teams were, whether it was soccer or basketball or softball or baseball or whatever the sport is, lacrosse, because there they were given the opportunity to develop their leadership skills, their teamwork skills, and things of that nature. And as I progressed to high school sports, I coached at Archbishop Spalding High School. And now as a legislator, there's this continuity of effort by parents, by community leaders, and by county and state leaders to provide the infrastructure to allow these kids to blossom. And I have to tell you, we've had some great athletes come through Anne Arundel County, and they started with the rec leagues, and they went on to the county leagues and on to the high school leagues.
Any names we would recognize?
I presume that one of our World Cup players, whose name escapes me at this moment, but I'm sure you're going to remind me, who was the midfielder for the World Cup team. Can't remember?
Is it, I think Chris Kavanaugh from Crofton and Anne Arundel, something like that.
Somebody else. Anyway, Mark Teixeira out of Severna Park. We have a number of young folks who've been developed out of the Annapolis programs. But it all starts at the local level with parents helping the kids, but they can't do it without the proper infrastructure and the proper oversight of the facilities. That's why the Anne Arundel County Parks and Recs Department is so important. They leverage state and county money with volunteers and local money to develop the best facilities we can have. We know that for every dollar we invest in the sports program at Parks and Recs, we get a $2 to $3 return because of all the extra funding the community brings to the table and all the volunteer work. Tell me, how many teams do we have, or how many organizations do we have around the county that would help develop these youngsters?
We have about 2,100 teams that participate in our county-sponsored programs. Mm-hmm. Probably around 24,000 participants.
That's a lot of kids.
And so, and that's just the base county recreation programs. Within that, you still have the element of travel basketball teams, travel soccer teams, travel volleyball teams,
travel lacrosse teams.
Travel lacrosse teams that, while they're not in a county-sponsored program, they're using the facilities here in Anne Arundel County that we maintain and provide a service for.
Sure. David, your father coached at the Naval Academy, so what great athletes have you saw come up through the ranks?
Well, I mean, it was kind of interesting because right out of college, I had finished, I played at a small college in Ohio. The coaches at the Naval Academy invited me because they knew a lot of the local kids. And he said, why don't you bring some kids down to play against our new incoming plebes? And so, so I reached out to people like Danny Rowland, who played at Annapolis High School, a bunch of the guys I knew from Annapolis, to go over and play on a Sunday because that was their only day off during plebe summer. Sure. And so I'm sitting there shooting around, and a kid comes out walking on his hands all the way from the locker room. I'm thinking, is this a gymnastics class or what? It was David Robinson.
Oh, really?
So at that time, he was around only 6'7", 6'8", but
obviously
he grew a little bit and had a pretty good career.
So why don't you tell us about your relationship with Speaker of the House, Mike Bush?
Well, that was interesting. I transferred back to St. Mary's High School my senior year, and Mr. Bush was our coach. Had a tremendous year, was really fortunate at the local players on the team who allowed me to come in as the new guy on the block. And in a short amount of time, and I think Mr. Bush will share this with you. We have probably one of the cohesive, best team working teams that he had at St. Mary's, and I think was special for us as players, but also made it special for him as a coach.
And Senator Riley, what was it like for you coaching at Martin Spalding?
It's great, and it's now called Archbishop Spalding. Martin Spalding is what we used to refer to it in the 60s and 70s. Well, it was very interesting because the coaches at the time wanted to take Archbishop Spalding to a national level. Mm-hmm. So they started scheduling games against all the national powerhouses, and it attracted unbelievable players. We had a guy named Snowden after Spalding, went to Villanova, was their point guard. Rudy Gay came out of Spalding, went to Connecticut for only 2 years before he jumped to the NBA. We had Bauer, who played for Maryland as a center. We had an awful lot of nice players who went to Division III. Towson, Salisbury, some of these great players, great schools. The issue is giving a child an opportunity, whether community rec, high school, it prepares them in many different ways. I have to share with you that it's not the successes on the court that we always want to look at. We also want to recognize that these kids are given discipline. They're given the opportunity to win and to fail. They're given the opportunity to be a leader or a follower as they come onto the team and progress into being a true leader. And these are some of the characteristics that sports brings to our community. I've got a great story about a young man who played at DeMatha. At his junior year, the coach, famed Coach Morgan Wooten, came to him and said, "You know, young man, you're just not quite good enough to be a senior on the DeMatha team." But to this day, Morgan Wooten refers to him as one of his most impressive DeMatha graduates because of what he did off the field. Physicians, lawyers, politicians, the things we learn in sports carry over to our lives. And you know, when somebody like Morgan Wooten points folks out like that, it's a real testament that the programs have a lot of benefit for the community. The interesting thing that I found, I was just at a South River High School JV football team. My grandson is a punter and a linebacker. Some of these rivalries start when they're 5 and 6 years old, because the Crofton Cardinals are playing against the Gators over in Odenton, or the Green Hornets in Severna Park, and these kids progress through the program to the high schools. Did you ever see any of that rivalry carry on?
Well, I tell you, one of the great things, I moved back here to Annapolis to accept this position, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come back to Anne Arundel County is because of the special upbringing I had, playing in the different organization, the T-Birds, the Annapolis Elks, and exactly what you said. We had rivalries with the kids, with the Severna Park Green Hornets, the Crofton Cardinals, I think they were, and those things did carry all the way through high school, and it's so much fun afterwards, after we've all grown up and gone through the whole cycle. I can see those guys on the street today, and you recall games and situations all the way back to the youth days that you referred to.
Well, you can see them playing in FedEx Field, too. This week in the Sun and the Evening Capital, they had an article about A.J. Francis, right, the defensive lineman with the Washington Redskins, who grew up playing in the Severn Football League, coached by his father, went to Gonzaga High School, the University of Maryland, and is now playing for the Redskins. And the articles basically said exactly what the senator was saying about how the youth leagues develop with the fathers and the local coaching.
So, Jonathan, thank you for the leading comment about asking the General Assembly to recognize Anne Arundel County as really one of the premier programs in the state. But you have to understand, this is also a reflection of the investments. You have to realize that when I was on the county council 12 years ago, we put aside money and made the commitment to put turf fields in every single public high school football field. Now what happens is, when you have a regular grass field, as Parks and Recs knows, the maintenance, the wear and tear, very difficult. You get a turf field, you can use it 11 months of the year. You can use it for multiple sports. You can use it from early morning till late evening with multiple different users because of the striping on the fields, whether it's girls lacrosse or football, yes, or soccer. And that investment really pays dividends. It also allows some of our local community rec-based programs to hold tournaments where you can have lots of teams coming in and out, and the wear and tear on the facility isn't that bad. About every 7, 8 years, you got to do a little maintenance on these turf fields. But the fact is that we were one of the first counties in the state, if not the nation, to level the playing field and give every single high school the same high quality equipment and facilities that we can. Also, when we were on the, when I was on the county council, we funded a significant amount of money for facilities for parks and recreation, trying to develop new facilities around the county strategically placed so that, again, more opportunity for more teams to play. There is a shortage of fields now, and Parks and Rec has to continue to work on it, but I have to tell you that we've done a good job with the resources available, and I think it's paying off in the kids.
Now, in every meaning of the word, you're probably the biggest cheerleader for high school sports in the Maryland General Assembly. What, as a state senator, can you do for high school sports in Anne Arundel County?
So about 3 years ago, we got a bond bill, and a bond bill is a fancy name for a grant, and we got it over to Broadneck High School. And with this $100,000 being matched by the Boosters Club, they reconfigured their field house. And again, pride in facility, effectiveness, a good room for the physical therapist, the trainer, good storage for the equipment, taking good care of the equipment. By investing in the local high school booster clubs, we multiplied the money because they came up with a matching amount. It helps the high school program, it helps Parks and Recs, because once those varsity and JV teams step off, those fields are made available to the Parks and Recreation Department. So investing money in facilities is a big way. As a county councilman, investing in the turf fields, as well as providing sufficient number of dollars for personnel for Parks and Recreation. Those are very important investments we make into the kids.
And you're also very strong on female sports, too. They dominate as much as the male sports teams in Anne Arundel County.
Absolutely. We've had some tremendous women athletes. As a matter of fact, I think the University of Maryland women's lacrosse coach spends a lot of time in Anne Arundel County trying to find some good folks to bring home.
I can tell you that to be true. I was filming on the sideline of the championship game this year up in Foxborough, and I checked out the roster, and most of them did come from Anne Arundel County. And here's what's truly interesting. Most of their fathers played lacrosse in college, too. So it's going from the fathers to the daughters now.
I understand. Genetics is an important thing, and also the parents who've played sports are interested in developing their children into good athletes with good values. I have to tell you that I played a little bit in college. When my son was coming up, it wasn't just about winning. It was about the fundamentals and treating your teammates with respect, treating your opponent with respect, and then finding a way to beat them. But I think that's true with an awful lot of parents. They've gone through the system, and in our youth and our young adults, you know, we may want to win at all costs and put aside all of the important values, but as we mature and we start to step in to be recreational coaches or high school coaches, we bring a little bit more maturity and a little bit more wisdom to instill in the young kids.
Mr. Smalley, in terms of values, what values did Mike Bush instill in you when he was your high school coach that you now see as him as the Speaker of the House for the Maryland General Assembly? Well,
I think the way he represents himself as the Speaker, and just like as the Senator referred to, the team part of everything is so important. And how you have to depend on each other to be able to make and come to an agreement so that you can go forward, whether it's a game plan against a certain team or, you know, just the goals setting that you do as a team. And all those things form that core of basic values that, as the Senator referred to, that just carries you, you know, the ball stops bouncing after a while. So what happens after that, and a lot of what you learn starting with the youth programs like we have in Anne Arundel County, and then progressing into whatever level the kid wants to take it. Sometimes there's affordability issues, but parents, because Their basic concept is they want their kids to believe in themselves as much as the parents believe in them.
Sure.
And to accomplish that, you get them involved in programs just like the ones here in Anne Arundel County, and let the kids' interest and his desire take over from there. And from there, there's options at all different levels, no matter what sport you're in.
Now, for the politics of sports, we always ask, when have you seen sports bring the community together? Senator Riley?
Well, of course, whenever one of our teams ends up in the state finals, or state semifinals or finals, it's not just the parents and the kids from that school. It's all the people they played against who know the value of what the kids have done. They come out to support also. And there's been some great rivalries. I remember several years, the Arundel girls and the Arundel boys basketball teams were heading for the state finals. And it was amazing to see other coaches come from other programs, other players who wanted to see their folks locally beat the fellows from or girls from Montgomery County or Carroll County or wherever they may be from. Jonathan, I'm sitting here listening, and I just want to run through a couple of other capital investment projects which have been paid for by the taxpayers of Anne Arundel County for the benefit of our kids. Delegate Costa a few years ago made sure we had lights down at Southern High School football field. Again, when you have the ability to play into the darkness, you extend the number of hours, the number of opportunities for playing. You mentioned Mike Bush. I believe the facility in back of Annapolis High School, now called Bush Stadium or the Bush Complex, because he made sure that those kids who may not have a background as affluent as Crofton or Severna Park or Arnold or whatever, that they had the same opportunity with facilities as anybody else in the county, making sure we level the playing field. We've made sure that there were new lights over at Arundel High School football field. That was a big deal. Also paid for by some of the real estate developers in the area. They made some significant contributions to the Arundel football field, the Carroll Field facilities. It's not just families, it's businesses, it's government units. We're all here to make sure that we give the best opportunity for these kids, because the long-term benefit is significant, because they learn the values, they learn the traits, and you can apply it to almost anything. I'm a sales rep. I'm competitive. I've got a game plan. Learned a lot of that through sports. You don't always hit a home run every time, so you still got to get back up and get at bat. That has helped me in politics, because I don't always hit a home run in politics every day. But sports is a very important part. The other important thing about our rec leagues, and I always want to start with that as a foundation. The majority of the time, if a kid can walk and trot, we'll find a place for him to play a sport. Not every student, not every athlete's going to be in the high school team or the college team or the pro ranks. I think for every 100,000 kids in rec leagues, one gets to be an NFL player.
Sure.
But we find ways for kids to participate and to be active. One of the great criticisms of our society these days is the sedimentary thumb work and sit in front of the boob tube or the computer tube. Recreational sports allows every kid to be a participant. Well, if you can't run fast, maybe it's volleyball. If you don't have to be a sprinter to play catcher on a softball team. There's an awful lot you can do, even if you have a limited ability. I have to share with you, I was a late bloomer. I didn't play high school basketball, but I was given an opportunity in college to play for a year. So sometimes these kids take a little bit of time to mature. It's the Michael Jordan story.
Sure.
Didn't make the JV basketball team in high school. Well, sometimes it's because you just need a few more days, a few more months to develop and to have a good attitude and to keep working at things. So,
well, let's talk about the future. County Executive Shue said he was going to build more high schools, and he's doing it. So what do you think that's going to do for sports in Anne Arundel County?
More locations, more turf fields, lit fields.
More opportunities to blossom for the athletes.
Yeah. One of the things that County Executive Shue says, and it's so very, very true, if you've got 50 spots on a football team and you've got 500 kids, 500 boys, well, there's a certain ratio. But our high schools have 1,000 students, 1,000 boys going for those 50 spots. How many basketball spots? 12 varsity, 12 JV, out of 1,000 students, whether it's girls or boys. The smaller the schools and the more number of schools, the better opportunity it is for kids to participate at a very competitive level. We don't want to leave anybody out. We're not going to give trophies just for participating. But at the same time, the smaller schools allow more leadership, more involvement, and I think a better product all around.
So, Mr. Smalley, what do you think happening from the Department of Recs?
Well, I think, as a matter of fact, I was just in a budget planning session before I came here today. So I know one of the directives from County Executive Shue and my boss, Rick Anthony, are looking at is other opportunities beyond the school development that you just mentioned to enhance and create more opportunities with field facilities and rec centers and swim centers.
And that's across the county?
And that's across the county, and try to get good coverage in all locations around the county.
And don't forget, Jonathan, one other important thing. For every player on the field, there's managers, there's equipment folks, there's videographers, there's statisticians. Kids can participate in sports without being on the field. And again, the more teams we have, the more opportunities for some of these ancillary activities to take place. Not everybody's going to be a quarterback. But if you don't have the right statistics, if you don't have the good equipment, if you don't have the managers ready to run out and help people at the moment they need it, it can make a difference. So again, more opportunity for a range of students.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about is the influence of the military in Anne Arundel County and that impact on sports. You have Fort Meade. I remember growing up playing against the teams from Fort Meade. They always had the best equipment. They had full-time coaches. We were coached by our fathers. You know, we've got Fort Meade, we've got NSA, we've got the Naval Academy. Your father coached at the Naval Academy. What influence do you see the military having on?
Well, I had a personal experience when I grew up and was playing for the Elks Club in football. Jack Cloud, who was the football coach at the Naval Academy, the lightweight team. His son, Marty, lived in my neighborhood, one of very close friends.
He's a good lacrosse player, too.
Yes, we played for the Elks Club, and we started off the season, and our coach, who was non-military, wasn't sure what we were going to do offensively, so he called Coach Cloud, and Coach Cloud brought over a couple ensigns that played for him, and all of a sudden we installed the option offense, and we became very successful because there was a whole lot of discipline in that offense. But those
we didn't have that luxury in Crofton, that's for sure.
But those are the type of scenarios I can think of, and I know it's continued. You know, I was here for a set time growing up, but over that time since then, you know, there's other people who have jobs or were involved at sports at the academy that have that sort of will to give back. Plus, it's their kids, so you know they're active and involved in their kids' lives, which is always a positive thing. And they're willing to come out and put the time and effort in to give kids not only the great facilities, but then some guidance to be able to maximize whatever they want to get out of that particular sport they're participating in.
So, Jonathan, to add on to this discussion about military folks,
Yes.
There was a fellow recruited out of Hershey High School to the Naval Academy to play basketball by the name of Hank Kuzma. And Hank had a very good high school career. His teams, and they had two brothers, they had very good high school careers. But when he came down here, he had that same attitude the football coach currently has. It's about the team, not about the individual. So Hank Kuzma ended up having 5 different statistical records for the Naval Academy until the Admiral came along,
Yes.
David Robinson. And the interesting thing is he had the record for rebounds, percentage of shots from the field, highest percentage of shots from the foul line, most points in Naval Academy history, and most assists. Now you got to remember, if you're a shooter, you're a shooter. If you're a feeder, you're a feeder. To be the guy who not only scores but feeds the team is very, very unusual. So Hank raised his family in Crofton, and he coached some of my kids. And again, that discipline, that strive for excellence came out of his naval background. And we were very fortunate in Crofton to have Hank Kuzma coach for 5 or 6 years for our community.
So let's talk about the political games you have to play with parents. What was that like when you were coaching with that now in your position?
Well, it's, as we said before, sports is a great venue to get kids engaged, to help develop not only whether they want to pursue higher levels of sports, but just life skills. I think sometimes in today's society, we get a little overboard with where we take it, and it's us as parents, unfortunately, that set that example sometimes. And if you get overly involved for what the basic core of what you're trying to accomplish here, then things can go a little awry. And we at the county are trying to work with the different community organizations to come up with basic bylaws that say, here's how we're going to govern this. This is our goals. This is what we're here to produce and offer to you as a program, a sports program in Anne Arundel County. And this is how we think we're going to best be able to operate. And then each individual organization comes up with their rules to say, here's how we're going to do our registrations. And guess what? If a parent has a complaint, here's how we're going to handle those complaints. We're going to handle it as an organization, and we, as representatives on the Anne Arundel County Parks and Rec team, we're going to support those, listen to them, listen to ideas as well as input. And hopefully, together, going back to the community and how they have to work together, we come up with a better product and then a better environment for kids to enjoy everything that you have with all the facilities here.
Senator Riley,
I'd like to follow up on this.
Oh, I was going to say, being on the county council, you must have plenty of stories from parents.
Yeah, but it's more realistic stories about actually coaching through the different ranks. You have to understand that when we're doing the community entry-level sports, everybody has to have a lot of opportunity. I'm not saying everybody gets the same amount of time, but everybody has to have opportunity. But as you climb the ranks to travel teams, to high school teams, to select teams, parents have to be very careful because the coach is trying to advance the most talented kids. And I understand that my 4 children were the best athletes on the field or on the court, but the coach may not have thought so. One of the things I've always advocated is that the kids need to talk to the coach. You have a authority figure and you have a child who's operating under their influence, and if for some reason there's a problem, the child has to have the confidence and the support to go to the coach. Say, these are my problems. I'm not getting enough playing time. You have me in the wrong position. But part of growing up is dealing with adults, dealing with authority figures. And you have to have enough strength, personal strength, to address in a respectful way the issues you have. And generally, the coach will say, well, you want more playing time, play harder in practice, and work harder outside of practice in terms of your strength and your speed. Again, at that basic rec level, everybody plays. That's fine. But as you climb the chairs, if you climb the levels, it gets tougher and tougher to earn playing time. And children have to have the ability to approach the coach, not the parent, on their behalf. Most parents don't want to hear that. They pay the freight, they're paying their taxes, they feel that there's been an injustice. Well, generally it's because their child just isn't quite good enough to make that next level or to earn enough playing time. So it's, again, part of life and life skills that we learn in sports that we can take with us to our adulthood.
Well, both of you have done the heavy lifting on bringing more attention to Maryland and sports, especially in Arundel County. But why do you think it doesn't get its due nationally? Because when you look at it, Maryland dominates in virtually every sport. Severna Park in lacrosse, Arundel in baseball, DeMatha in basketball, South River in cheer, Severna Park in field hockey again. No school that Sports Illustrated ever picks in its high school issue could go up both ways of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway and survive. But Maryland and Anne Arundel County do not get its due. Why do you think that is?
Well, maybe because I would call it, we're a shoulder county. The 2 big organizations are Montgomery County and Baltimore County, and the 95 corridor that connects it. We're just a little bit off to the side. We don't have a TV station that covers our high school sports like Baltimore County does, or Montgomery County. We don't have a hometown newspaper. You know, we're kind of the
Tribune media now.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's an issue in terms of recognition, because the key is the coaches know. You go to any coach up and down the East Coast, or now with lacrosse out in the West Coast, they're looking at Anne Arundel County for their student athletes. They're good students, number one, which is the fundamental issue they have to work with, and number two, they're good athletes. The coaches know we're here. The coaches come here. Up at Archbishop Spalding, it wasn't unusual to see John Thompson come through the gym once in a while to look at a game.
Was that after Rudy Gay, I'm guessing?
Well, we also had a young man from Africa come over, Max Shokono, who became a kind of a protege of mine, who ended up with a scholarship at Sacred Heart University. But he was, as you remember, John Thompson was recruiting kids out of Cameroon and some of the African countries as juniors and seniors in high school, allow them to prove their educational ability as well as their athletic ability, then bring them to Georgetown. Bumchi Rubin was a fellow out of Cameroon, 7'4" center. Well, that was part of the same program that brought Max Shokono to Archbishop Spalding. So this is a good starting place for kids who come in from out of the area. We've had kids transfer from the South to Anne Arundel County to take advantage of sports.
Mr. Smalley, you played for DeMatha. Why don't you think Anne Arundel County gets its due?
Well, I think traditionally, and I just came back from a sports complex that had prep schools, so kids would come to try to further their opportunities to get college scholarships. And so we pay pretty close attention when we were there to the recruiting booklets. And I think there's a little stereotypical bias that says, well, for a while, all the great players were in Florida.
Sure.
All the great players were in Ohio or Northwest Pennsylvania, you know, for football. And basketball was sort of a Maryland, mid-Atlantic type of, because of the Dunbars, the DeMathas, et cetera. But I can tell you over the last 5 years that if you go to recruiting manuals for football and some of the other sports, I'm not even going to mention, as he said, lacrosse. They're already on the map for that. But everything from wrestling to football, there are more kids now getting opportunities and coming up on all the recruiting booklets as being top prospects for their particular sport. So I think it's changing a little bit, and I think, you know, as long as we do the things like we're currently doing here in Anne Arundel County, creating facilities, creating new schools, these wonderful opportunities to play on turf fields and things of that nature, I think those opportunities will only grow because kids get more excited and they want to take it to a higher level, and as they do that, there's a certain commitment and dedication to go to that higher level. But it's starting with the fact that they had a great experience in the youth programs that has led and played through great facilities that's created that opportunity and that enthusiasm for them to pursue it.
Now, Maryland seems to be hitting its stride in the Big Ten. They just beat Texas last week in football, which was an epic win. Both lacrosse teams won the championship, first time in history. What impact do you think that will have on high school sports and community sports in Maryland?
Oh, I think it's tremendous, because now you got kids that can relate to local players, whether they be from these areas in Maryland or not, Annapolis, Anne Arundel, Montgomery. But I think whenever you have national champions, I mean, lacrosse is still king around here. And look at the feeder system that goes right into the Maryland program, or many years ago, the Hopkins program. That has not changed. But now you got the basketball program is coming back to where it was back several years ago, and back to the early days of Lefty Drizel. So I think all those things come together, that local kids like following local athletes. And as they continue to have success at Maryland or Navy or any of the other schools in this area, kids sort of follow the newspapers. They want to be like that.
And also blue chip players would want to play for or against blue chip programs. When Maryland was in the ACC, we had some good teams, Wake Forest, Duke, North Carolina. But now we have consistent blue chip opponents. And there's nothing more important to a competitive kid to have an opportunity to knock off the big dog or to be the big dog themselves. And the boosters and the parents and the citizens of Maryland feel the same way. The transition, from my observation point, was a little tentative. First couple of years, they had a couple of little successes, but I think the next few years we'll find consistent, positive results on the football field, on the basketball field. But don't forget, a lot of other sports are played at a very high competitive level in the Big Ten. So it's a win situation. The other interesting thing is when the transition was occurring, the chancellor was in the Maryland State Senate, and I said to him, now I've been getting feedback from our citizens that we're going to be using our tax dollars for the buyout from the ACC or the buy-in to the Big Ten, and he said no. All those dollars are being paid for by the TV contracts. Mm-hmm. We're not using our tax dollars to make this transition. And it made me a little bit more comfortable that as we move forward, the long-term benefits would offset any potential costs and inconvenience.
Studies have shown that facilities are very important to 53% of students who go to college. Do you see that at the same level for high school and youth league?
Absolutely. I think it's even on a faster curve these days. When you have a facility like the Mike Bush Complex here in Anne Arundel County, I can tell you I've been around and seen a lot of facilities across the country. And when you drive into that and you see all those turf fields back there and those capabilities, it's very satisfying for me since I grew up here.
Sure.
And I played for Coach Bush, or Mr. Speaker. But anyway, kids get excited about that. You know, they see it on TV. And whenever they get an opportunity, I'm going to play my game on the turf field this weekend. That's exciting for them. And when you start at that youth level and let that continue to grow, it sponsors that enthusiasm. From
your long-term perspective, how important is sports to Speaker Bush?
Oh, extremely. I mean, I know it was a big part of his life growing up. I know he had a very successful college career. And I think Anne Arundel County was very fortunate to have him come back here and start off as a coach and teacher. And he's migrated into the political arena. But he's got his roots, whether it's his work ethic, whether it's looking to form unity within a team concept. All those things are important in whether he was coaching at St. Mary's or in his role here in the state of Maryland.
The other part of that is he's also putting money on the academic side. We always have to remember the fundamentals begin with good students, and then from there they can be great athletes also. Between he and Governor Hogan, they have put more money into public education in the state of Maryland than any other governor in the history of the state. So in addition to the facilities and the sports side of it, good schools attract good families, and that's an important fundamental for politics. It increases the tax base, it brings educated, high-earning people, it provides, when the students graduate and they get jobs and they stay home, it provides good citizens who understand the program. So it's a win all around, both academically as well as athletically.
And how much of an asset for you when you first ran for office was your coaching background in the local area?
Well, I think it was helpful, but it was more my experience as an athlete. The issue is, in politics, as in life, you get rejections. You get knocked down, you got to get back up. You get challenged by someone bigger, stronger, and faster than you. You have to ask yourself, what can I do to overcome my opponent? So it's more the things I learned as an athlete. Coaching, many times, is more teamwork. Coaching is a better analogy while I'm serving. Mm-hmm. When I'm running, I'm kind of running on my own. I'm a long-distance runner. When I'm serving, we have diversity. We have difference of opinion. We have geographic diversity. The folks in Garrett County, their needs are different than the ones in Prince George's County, and we have to understand that and make sure that we're addressing all those things. I found a great deal of growth as I've done my public work because of that diversity issue, and from my coaching background, that has helped me.
And so, Mr. Smalley, with your father as a coach, do you think your sports career was preordained?
I don't think so. Well, put it this way, not from him pushing me. It's like any kid. When you're a son of a coach, you go to the practices. You want to be around Dad. And so I would follow him to all his practices over at the Naval Academy. You just want to be around that environment. And then you're also fortunate, as you know, I went through a bunch of Final Fours as a little kid that no other kid, I don't think, had that opportunity to go see. I saw Jacksonville play at Cole Fieldhouse with Artis Gilmore and Pembroke Burroughs. And then I went up to Philadelphia to see Bobby Knight's Indiana team that was undefeated. So, you know, you just want to be around that environment. So, and it wasn't, Dad knows, nope, you're getting in the car and you're going to do this. No, and then now what am I going to do with my spare time? I get to watch these guys. Now I want to go play.
Sure.
So that was all part of that.
All right, last question. Just as all the children in Garrison Keillor's mythical Lake Wobegon are above average, so are all the athletes in Anne Arundel County. But what makes Maryland the best? What makes Maryland the greatest for sports?
The expectations of the administrators and the families. You have to understand we have more PhDs, more college graduates, more high income and educated people than any other state in the union. And with that, they don't want anything less than for their children. They want to make sure their children have an opportunity to have an excelling high school opportunity, to go to college and make sure they excel in college, and beyond that, if that's what the child can achieve. Their expectations in many ways drives the grassroots attitude in Anne Arundel County and the state of Maryland.
So, Mr. Smalley, what are the roots of the greatness for Maryland in sports, in your opinion?
Well, I think it starts with the family and people having an interest, as I said before, to see their kids succeed. And sports is such a wonderful element to get people started on that path. The piece now that we've talked to and referred to before is what helps support that as they grow up the ranks. A lot of that is facilities, a lot of that is government, and those type of things that provide those things for the people to flourish and blossom and take it wherever they want to take it. They make the choice, but while they're getting there, to have the support from the government's county executive shoes, particularly in Anne Arundel County, to drive home his initiatives as the best place to work and grow a family and have your kids grow up in. These are all things that we're focused on.
Land of pleasant living.
Yes.
Scott, greatness is made for a great interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.